Andromeda Independent Radio 88 MHz VHF.
This is the story of one of Manchester's early land-based pirate radio stations, Andromeda Independent Radio. Andromeda was run by two people called Bob and Andy from the earlier pirate Radio Aquarius, which operated from 1973 to 1975. After the demise of Radio Aquarius, headman Charlie Turner went on to set up Stockport pirate station KFM. After this, Bob and Andy decided that sometime in the future it could be possible to start doing a few test transmissions. These tests were done in order to ascertain what transmitter power and aerials would be required if they actually got around to putting something else on the air. Late 1978 saw a short series of Sunday afternoon tests using very low power transmissions of about 10 milliwatts from a local high spot in Tameside. Reception was surprisingly good, and a transmitter of 1 watt output was deemed suitable to cover the Tameside and East Manchester area. The transmitter was completed within a few weeks, and after getting home studio sorted out, the station finally made its way onto the air in November of 1978. The 1 watt transmitter was fed to a 2 or 3 element Yagi. This raised their ERP a little, but their coverage was given a boost by the choice of transmitter location at about 1300 feet ASL. Andromeda covered the Manchester and Cheshire area quite well, and they often got reports from Liverpool and Southport. The station was run in the same way as Aquarius, with shows pre-recorded onto tape cassette and replayed into the transmitter on the day of transmission. Early broadcasts were made from Harrop Edge overlooking Staley Bridge in Cheshire, but there was a bigger hill just over the road. Hobson Moor Road led to the back end of a very large hill, which looked out at the same area but was about 400 feet higher than Harrop Edge and gave better reception at the edges of the station's coverage. Every Wednesday night they would take their equipment, which consisted of the transmitter, batteries, aerial and a tape player, up the hill and set up. They hid nearby to change the cassettes as the night wore on, and it would shut down when the last tape had finished, and they would usually go back up to collect everything in the early hours. Programmes were aired on 94.6 FM, which was a little close to comfort for BBC's Radio 4 frequency. Sunday was the traditional day for pirate activity, but after a short while, Bob and Andy chose to be different and switched to Wednesday evenings. Things went well and a trickle of mail came in, some of it from people wishing to know how to put their own station on the air. Andromeda never suffered any raids, although there was an incident involving a missing transmitter and a mysterious car making off down the farm track, but the culprit was never found. There was also press interest from local and national newspapers including Stereo Magazine and The Guardian, and even Channel 4 television featured a short section on Andromeda in a show called Whatever You Want with soon-to-be famous actor Keith Allen. After that show aired, hundreds of letters arrived at Andromeda's mailing address. Here you can see some examples of letters sent in. This one was from Roger Couture, a listener down in Dunham in Altrincham, dated the 5th of July 1983. Another letter came from Cornwall from Podney R6, who I'm told was well known in free radio circles, and this is dated the 17th of September 1980. Another listener, PV Woods from Crewe, also sent a letter in, and finally there's one from Hazel, who went on to marry Andy. Tameside Eye, in its April 1980 issue, included a plea to deter listeners from making contact with Andromeda as well as listening to the station. It's also interesting to note that in the early 1980s, Andromeda was heard briefly in Dublin. It was only heard for a couple of minutes before fading, but it was enough for the listener to make a positive ID. By 1984, Bob and Andy decided to focus their attention on a smaller community and move the station to Glossop, a small town which received very poor coverage from established FM stations due to surrounding hills. Several broadcasts were made and reception across the town was good. A meeting was set up with local groups, but as usual, people wanted to listen to the station but weren't willing to put in some effort to help keep it on air. A bid to go legitimate saw little popular support, spelling its demise in late 1983, and Bob and Andy eventually closed the station in the autumn of 1984.
Andromeda, the sound of alternative radio.
What I mean is, right, it looks like I'm rapidly running out of time now. My name is Phil Travis, and you've been listening to Andromeda Independent Radio for the last 45 minutes, but stay tuned, there's another 45 minutes to come.
Watch out! Andromeda Independent Radio. Andromeda Independent Radio 88 MHz VHF.